This conference will now be recorded.
So thanks guys for joining this session. Thank you Anil Bhai for giving me a time. I hope my audio is okay to everyone.
Yes,
And let me introduce you Anil Bhai. He's a distinguished product manager for Oracle Real Application Cluster, and he has been involved with Oracle RAC since its inception. And he is working almost about 28 years, I think, right? And he provide solutions regarding Oracle RAC database, high availability, Exadata, and many more. And he is the presenter of every Oracle user group, whether AIUG or any other Oracle user group. So yes, Anil Bhai, welcome.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your giving me a time. So first question, I will start about personal. So can you share a bit about your journey and how you became interested in Oracle technology?
It's a good question. So after college, typically I tell this as to everybody, the first technology touch and play with, you would end up using that. Like if you use Java developer, then you become a Java developer. So for me, I started as a C programmer. I used to write what we call as back in the day Pro C programs, which is pre-compiler programs for databases, which are Oracle. And my
Hmm.
job was actually to write code a report for a fixed deposit application. So that's how my
Hmm.
journey started. And when I continued on that journey, I loved C, and also at the same time I loved to understand how does databases store information, and how do you retrieve that, and how to make sure that the database is consistent. So that interest actually took me more and more into the database area. So
Hmm.
I'm good today that I can read C code. I've not written much lately, but
Hmm.
I'm happy with where the database journey that has been almost 28 years, as you said.
Yes, yes, it's long journey, and in one company, I think Oracle is your second company, right?
Yes, I was there in India for one company, and then directly that's the second in the US. This is my only company. Yes.
Okay, so now you are US guy.
Yes, yes, in the way that we will tour for a while, but I still,
Yeah.
whenever I come to India, I enjoy everything. I love the people. I love the energy. You guys have amazing energy back. A lot of young crowd, which is very good.
Yes, and we meet, I think, Hyderabad AIOG first time.
Right, 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 right. Yes, yes.
Okay, so as your expertise in RAC mainly, you are expertise in every area, but I have chosen this topic because audience want a RAC discussion from you, so that's why I requested you. So first question from my side, RAC is what is RAC and what are the main objectives in database management in terms of freshers, if suppose.
Right, right, right. And that's a good segue into some of the newer technologies that have come in, right? So when I started with I would say databases long time ago, there was a need for databases to be available, and it was not that easy. The world was a little bit different place for anybody new who's joining into the cloud world now, right?
Hmm.
So it is today you see distributed databases which kind of use the cloud to make multiple replicas and say, all right, this is good. You don't need to do anything else. Well, really, what differentiates RAC as a technology when you compare to this kind of distributed databases is the simplicity of the solution. Simplicity means you can deploy or create an application for single instance, move it to RAC,
Hmm.
move
Hmm.
it to Exadata, and you say, you know what, actually, I want only a single instance. You can move it back. No changes at all. That is one of the biggest things that you get with. these things, right? And you get a consistent performance, and you get a consistent what we call as recovery point objectives, recovery time objectives. So for the
Okay.
business, it's easier. A business takes it much easier. The database developer makes it easier for them. The DBA is easier for them. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So, can you explain the concept of clustering in the context of Oracle database and how it differs from standalone databases?
Right. So just yesterday, I was having a conversation with a customer who has what we call as a operating system clustering. We used to require that back in the day in say 8i time frame, where we would integrate with the OS cluster. The problem was
Okay.
it's like having two drivers in the car, right? The OS cluster thinks I'm going left, and the database cluster thinks I'm going right. So we
Okay.
needed an integrated clusterware. So that's the journey we started in 9i. We
Uh-huh.
integrated the cluster with rack so that
Okay.
everybody has the same view of the nodes of the cluster and all that. And we made it very simple, which means
Okay.
we, talk to each other, and we make sure that the cluster is alive from the perspective of the database and from the perspective of the cluster itself, from the storage layer. All of these layers are looking at the same view of the cluster.
Okay. Okay. So, can you describe the key components of Oracle 19c rack architecture and their roles in ensuring high availability and scalability?
Yes. So what happened is with Oracle RAC, 9i, we started this journey, what we call as Oracle RAC Cache Fusion. So what
Mm-hmm.
Cache Fusion does is basically tries to send the blocks across the private network, and so we
Mm-hmm.
require processes for that. So we have LMS process that we have for making sure that we can send and receive buffers very, very quickly. We also rely on the underlying cluster where, as I said, if you have four nodes in a cluster and one of the node is misbehaving or sick or having some issues, we evict that very quickly and let the
Mm-hmm.
database, the instance has been evicted so that
Mm-hmm.
reconfiguration, recovery operations can continue fast. So
Okay.
we rely on our LMS, LMD processes to make sure that we can quickly
Mm-hmm.
get this operations insert update delete operations done. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole lot of features, by the way, which we can talk for a long time. But this has been some of the main crucial features.
Okay. Okay. So, how does Rack leverage shared disk architecture for data storage and multiple access across multiple nodes?
Right, and so this is one of the differentiators for rack, right? If you look at
Yes.
other technologies, they do shared nothing.
Yes.
Shared
Yes.
network is extremely hard to scale, whereas if you look at the way storage has evolved in the last 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
shared thing seems to be the way to go, and also makes it easier and simpler for the application developer. So if you look
Mm-hmm.
at share nothing, right? If you shard things, it requires the application to make and be aware of these shards. So that makes it hard to port the application. Let's say you have to move from, say, one cloud vendor to other. There are changes, there are latency
Mm-hmm.
issues.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with shared everything, we require and recommend that they put the cluster nodes close to each other. And so the latency is fixed, especially on Exadata, right? Because we use the RDMA. So our latency is like 19 microseconds. We can get a block from one node to other, which is really,
Mm-hmm.
really fast.
Okay. Okay.
So
So,
it's better
yeah.
shared storage. Mhm.
So,
Right.
can you discuss, means, can you tell or share your experience about benefits and challenges of implementing Oracle RAC in enterprise environment?
Yeah. So for a typical DBA who does single instance, it's a little bit more, what do you say? You have to, you know, know a little bit more about rack, right? So I remember my first time when I went to a customer, and the customer said, "Your database just rebooted my node," and I was like, "No, no, no, my single instance database won't reboot the node." And then I realized about rack and everything, right? So it's a journey. It's a journey to understand that you have two nodes or three nodes or four nodes, which is kind of one database, or you could have multiple database, but at least one database. So there is this little bit of a what you say learning curve to understand that there will be different nodes of the cluster, and what you need to do when you apply patches. Like Oracle provides you tools like Opatch Auto, but still you need to know that what Opatch Auto does is applies the patch on all the nodes. On single instance, only one thing, you patch one thing. In rack, you patch multiple instances, and at the same time, you benefit from what we call as, you could get, 100% availability because you patch in a rolling fashion. So your application
Okay.
can go from instance one to instance two. So you need to know a little bit more, and the more you know, the more you can do better for your business.
Okay. Okay. So, as you said, cache fusion. So, can you little bit explain how it enhanced database performance and concurrency, and what is cache fusion to the audience, those who are new?
Right. So when you have a cluster, right, you have two nodes or three nodes, and you have a block. You want to update, say, insert into a table or update a table EMP, and you don't really care about where you're connected. So session one could get connected to node one, session two could be a node two. Now, every time you update a block, you need to make sure that we write the block changes to the log, and we send the block to the other instance. Now, there are two ways to send. We can say, write it to the disk and read it from the other side. That used to happen before cache fusion. We call it write, right? And write is always slow when compared
Okay.
to writes are typically, let's say, take milliseconds, whereas when you send this across the private network, it takes microseconds. That's like hundreds of times better in performance. So cache
Mhm.
fusion typically a technology that transfers blocks between instances where it is requested.
Okay. Okay. So, what are the different types of workload balancing methods supported by Oracle RAC, and how do they contribute to optimizing resource utilization?
Yes, this is yet another very, very unique feature of Oracle databases, especially with RAC. So when you look at a typical database, right, every database will says, okay, connect using username, password, hostname, and port. Yes,
Okay.
that is very easy. But what we do a little bit more is we also ask, hey, can you tell us what you want to do? So let's say we have this concept of services. So a customer can say, I have an OLTP service. So they could call it OLTP sales. And they could have another service called OLTP DSS, which is the decision support systems or large queries. Then you can say, hey, make sure that my OLTP runs on two nodes of the rack cluster and my DSS runs on the third node. Or you can say on weekends when my manager wants to have those reports, let's make that DSS service run on node two and three. And so you can manage workloads very, very optimally. And this is something that you can customize one and implement again and again. So this is one of those very, very rare things that a database and very unique things that a database vendor provides. So you as a customer can optimize the usage of resources that you want.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Thank you. So, we know that RAC provides scalability and availability. So, suppose I am adding a node or deleting a node. So, what will be the impact on my database performance or operations? Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. So since from the start of this project, that is in 2001 or 2000, one of the things what was required is basically that we want to make sure that we always provide uh, a node addition, node deletion, instance addition, instant deletion without affecting without downtime. So
Okay.
basically you could add instances, or you could delete instances, or you could add node and delete node. So we have optimized this so much that recently I was reviewing the docs, the documentation, and I saw this. Hey, this is having too many steps. So we have now made it like 14 steps, 2 steps. So and added automation to that. Now you would say, Anil, this is hard. Yes, this is hard, but if you look at autonomous, our Oracle autonomous offering, this is exactly what happens behind the scene. If you opt for a 4-core autonomous database, you get a piece of the cluster, as I call it. And as you keep allocating more and more CPU, it's actually
Hmm.
allocated on 2 nodes. And if you go
Okay.
and say 400 CPUs in front, it keeps adding more and more instances. And the application does not even know that there is a rack
Okay.
cluster behind it. So this is all
Okay.
the beauty. We automatically make sure that we can expand, or as we call it, grow horizontally and also scale vertically. So best of both.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So my next question is how rack handle node failures and provide continuous availability of database services.
Right. So that is what the problem we tried to solve in the past, which is basically using what we call as the vendor cluster, where we used to call it. We used to use the vendor cluster and say, you take care of the nodes of the cluster, we'll take care of database. That never worked. So we came up with a simplistic solution, which is with our clusterware. What we do is we don't require any specialized hardware. We don't require anything
Hmm.
special. What we require is a private network, and we have a voting disk. So we send
Okay.
heartbeat every second to each other, and we write to the voting disk. And if there is some issue by which we cannot send or receive messages, we say we have to evict a node. Now we also
Hmm.
made it small. So what happens typically is if you have a 2 node cluster and we say, hey, there is a problem between node 1 and 2, you can evict either 1 or 2 and it doesn't matter, right? Because the problem is these
Hmm.
can't talk to each other. We enhanced it to find out, hey, let's look at secondary failures. If you have a 2 node cluster and node 1 and 2 is unable to talk to each other, and node 1's public listener or public network is down, what's the point of evicting node 2? We might want to make sure that we evict node 1 because it has secondary failure. We look at
Hmm.
that. We also look at what is the workload running on the system. If you have more PDBs or if you have more work on a node, then we try to preserve that node and not evict the busy node, so that we try to make sure that work continues without any failures. So that is the first part. The first part is
Okay.
eviction. Evicted.
Okay.
Now we need to make sure what happens when the node reboots. We make sure that, are you okay? What does that mean is, let's say the node comes up and the reason why the eviction occurred is, let's say the network card is broken.
Hmm. Hmm.
Broken is a very hard word, but let's, for the
Hmm.
purpose of this example, use broken.
Hmm.
One word.
Hmm.
So if the node comes up and the node is still
Hmm.
network is still broken, we don't
Hmm.
even allow it to join the cluster. We say, no, no, what, fix your problems, then you join the cluster. So that we kind of optimize all these things, because every time there is a node eviction, we have a reconfiguration. So we try to prevent the timings for this, and we have a lot of features to improve reconfiguration. I have blogged about it, by the way, the recovery buddy and all that. Very, very good
Okay.
concepts that we should understand as as database administrators, to see how does this work. Because when things happen, it's good to know, have a fair idea of how things work.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks. So we know that we had clusterware in rack, right? So what is the use of its managing resources and maintaining the integrity of rack environments?
Right. So the clusterware is a very simplified term, right? So once we got into the clusterware part back in the day, we also took care of storage. If you remember back in back in the day, I used to get so many SRs from customers or complaints from customer that we added a new table space, and now when I run my report, it is slow. It is IO bound because slash blah device is very slow. And what would DBA do? They would say, all right, let me try to move this around and say alter system or alter database, move the file from this location to that location. This used to be very common task. We took
Hmm.
all of that application out with ASM and we integrated it with the clusterware, which we call it the grid infrastructure. So now you have storage and the nodes being managed by the clusterware layer. Okay. So we have storage, which is basically on the principle of same, right? Same
Hmm.
means stripe and mirror everything, right?
Yeah.
So in ASM, we stripe and mirror everything so that you would never have the problem I mentioned. What that
Yeah.
means is we drive all the disks at the same speed. So you would never see one disk going faster than the others and all that. So we really do this, in a different way. Then we
Okay.
have the cluster itself. We make sure that not only we maintain the heartbeats, we actually send out events. These
Okay.
events, fan events, we call it fast application notification events, which can be consumed by the client. So let's say your plant maintenance activity, you have a maintenance activity on instance one. It's a plant maintenance, meaning you need to apply a patch, some firmware patch. So you say, Sir CTL, relocate the service. We send that event to the clients, to the connection pool. So all of that is part of clusterware. Why do we send those events? Because events are a way to tell some, upcoming change in configuration, so the client can actually do the right thing. And what is the right thing? Maybe connect to the other instance, and that happens without letting the application know that there is a reconnect or relocation from instance one to instance two, which means higher availability, which means better for everybody, right?
Yes. Correct. Correct. Thank you. So we know that client connectivity is major issue. So because of that, there is a feature comes scan single client access name. So what is it and how it simplifies client connectivity to the database cluster?
Right. So that's yet another very unique thing that we have, right? So most competing databases to Oracle provide you what we call as a cluster IP, they call it. Um, we have this concept of SCAN. SCAN stands for Single Client Access Network. What
Hmm.
that means is if you have two nodes of a cluster today, and if you don't have SCAN, let's say you add a third node, then for every client TNS names.ora, you need to have an address equal to entry level,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right? This is too much work for the DBA. So we said, you know what? Customer will connect using a scan IP. The scan will know what to do when a client connection comes in. And this, what happens is, let's say a client comes and says, I want to talk to a database on host, 1.1.1.1, and then the port number is say 1521, and it's a sales database. Now that 1.1.1.1 is actually a scan. It's not a physical host IP, but the
Yes.
list coming there knows what to do with that connection and send it to the node or the instance that is running that service. And that is an amazing feature because now you can delete a node or add a node. But since your scan is fixed, the 1.1.1.1, we don't care how many nodes are there in a cluster, which means we can have lots and lots of nodes. And just for record, I used to be at a customer site with 52 node cluster. So that
Okay.
imagine the names of that file, right? Without scan. So with scan, that TNS names is like 10 to 12 lines. If there was no scan, you would at least have 10 to 12 lines times 50.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big thing, big terms of saving in terms of manually or physically maintaining it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, can you describe the benefits of Oracle 19C Rack for workload management, including online reconfiguration and dynamic resource allocation?
Right. So we touched a bit on this topic in the sense that we how services are crucial to help manage this, right? We also have ways by which we provide what I call tuning knobs. What is a tuning knob?
Okay.
Remember I said about service. You can
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I want this service on running on two nodes, and I want what I call as connection load balancing. What that means is if I have 100 connections, it going to two node cluster, 50 will go to instance one, 50 will go to instance two, because it goes like
Mhm.
one, two, one, two, one, two, like that. So it's very simple. Now, some customer says, no, 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 I don't want it like that. I want it based on the runtime of the nodes. What that means is, let's say instance one, you're running a huge report. So the CPU is only 50% free, meaning 50% is busy. Now, if you do connection load balancing, the system will get unbalanced. So the customer
Okay.
can say, look, you do runtime load balancing. What that means is we will figure out the load of the system and we will try to send the connection to the other instance. So how does
Mhm.
this all work? This works because there is a process called LREG. It's a LREG process that looks at the CPU load on the system and it feeds that information all the way up to the scan, the listeners and the scan listeners. So what would
Okay.
happen is listener knows node 1 is very busy. I am getting 100 connection. So it will send, say, 30 connections to node 2. Now node 2 became busy. So it'll say, okay, let me try to send some to node 1. So we kind of try to fill the capacity based on the current load. So we provide you these two features in the upcoming release. We have yet another
Okay.
way by which we can improve this. And for that, I will have to talk maybe in 3 months' time or 4 months' time
Okay.
whenever Ahmad invites me again. But that is how feature. So I can't talk much about it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. No issues. Can you discuss the best practice for performance tuning in Rack, Oracle 19C Rack, and how optimize SQL queries and system configuration? Can you tell a little bit about this?
Yes, so there are three things, very important things that we touched on here, right? One is how do you make sure your system is optimally tuned? This is a
Hmm.
very complex question back in the day, but lately working with Sandesh and some of my other team members, we have simplified it. I'm very happy that now you can go and find out how good your system is, and we do it based on a report card based system. What is a report card? Back in the day, school, we go, we give our
Mm.
test, we get a report
Yes,
card
yes,
saying very good or very bad. We get 95%. So we give you a MAA report card with what we call as a Aura check or Exa check. We tell
yes,
you
yes,
what your system is, and we have a benchmark system, which is the best system, which is 100%. And we tell you how close to you are. So we say you could run this on your system and find out whether you have the correct patches, whether you have the right kernel parameters, the right init.aura parameters, and all that. So that's the first thing. I always recommend customers to run Aura check periodically on their system, especially after a operating system patch or something like that. Right? That's the first thing.
okay, okay,
Second thing is we always will have problems when certain things don't work. What does that mean? Sometimes queries don't come fast, or sometimes an application say, hey, performance was very good till yesterday, today it is slow, can you check? So we need to check what is the problem. And one way to check is to look at a AWR report. You need to look at an AWR report and figure out whether it's a cluster contention, as in a rack contention, or whether it's a single instance contention. Because rack can also have a bad query, which will make the performance slower. Now, all the concepts of single instance tuning apply to rack. What that means is
mhm,
you have SQL plan stability. You need to make sure statistics are collected. All those things
mhm,
apply to rack also. Once
mhm,
you go through the process to say it's not a rack issue, it's a single instance issue. We go through this process of, you know, eliminating the SQL, and we have a lot of things, right? ADDM tells you this, and you can look at SQL, the plan stability options we have, SQLTs you have. All of this gives you a good idea on what could be a single instance issue. But this session is about
Okay.
rack, so let's worry about single instance. So on
Yeah.
rack, what would happen is we would have most of the common issues I see nowadays is people trying to over allocate resources into a database, right? So I have
Right. Right.
seen I have a customer. I will not take the customer name, but they have 140 databases on one system.
Oh.
140 databases, and this is not even multi-tenant. This is just different databases. The problem when you have 100 and plus databases in these kind of scenarios is operating system gets very busy managing these things. So it
Yeah.
starts it starts audit files, all those management, all those resources management takes long time. That's the most common thing I've seen. With
Mm-hmm.
23C, this may get better because remember,
Mm-hmm.
in 23C, there is no non CDB architecture. Everybody has to be the pluggable database architecture, which
Mm-hmm.
gives a bit more chance for these customers to consolidate into a CDB base. So you have one CDB with hundreds of PDBs. That's a better thing to manage than hundreds of single instance or rack clusters or on one single system. That's going to be really really hard to manage. That's what I see nowadays as the big issue.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So as we know that backup and recovery part of single instance, so how these options available for in rack 19C and how they do they ensure data integrity and business continuity?
But yeah, that's a good thing. So the as I said, we try not to make additional work for single instance versus rack. So
Hmm.
everything that you do for single instance for backup recovery applies to rack. For example, you need to take periodic backups, you can take full backups, you can take incremental backups. All of them apply to rack.
Hmm.
If you want, you can actually restore a rack database to single instance if you want, and you can do that.
Yes,
So all
correct.
of those is possible. We don't make it any more or give you any more work. For the cluster part, we actually back up the voting disk into the OCR, and we have multiple copies of OCR, and so it's not much of a problem. For OCR itself, you can take a backup, depending on how you want to do it. For example, you can just back up the whole block device,
Hmm.
or we provide an option to dump the OCR into a file that you can back up. So we give you a lot of options to back up and all that. With ASM, typically what happens is with ASM, we recommend, for example, high redundancy or normal redundancy. So
Hmm.
you don't need to restore as much because
Hmm.
typically you back up. You back up because you anticipate a restore. with with
Yeah.
with ARM, we give you redundancy layer, so you don't really need to lose it. For example, you can always say on my test system I don't want to back up my OCR and voting disk. So for that small disk group you can say high redundancy, and then for your test systems you can say external redundancy. And the test systems you can back up and restore easily without having to learn something rack related, which is basically rman restore and you're done. So there is no additional work that you need to do to manage a backup and recovery situation in rack when compared to single instance.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
And the second features, which is key features, I can say like data guard. So how it cope up or integrate with the 19C rack for achieving disaster recovery and data protection.
Correct. So that's a good segue into what I was trying to get a little bit is so we had customers always using rack right next to each other, right? You have two nodes right
Okay.
next to each other. Then we found out that there are certain customers who have actually spread the rack nodes over distances, like 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers. We call this extended rack, or
Uh,
so this is something that customers did on their own, and we did not know. And
yes.
then they found out it's good. If it works for you. The way that I understand is simple, right? My colleague in Oracle always tells me the speed of light is constant. What does that mean here is the more the distance, the higher the latency to send and receive blocks. If your
Yes. Correct.
application with that, good. But then they said, hey, if I lose one site because of any kind of disaster, like today morning, I found out that in Taiwan there was a big earthquake. Yeah, there disasters happen
Yes.
across, right?
Yes. Yes.
To make sure your data is protected, right? So this is where we say, yes, stretch clusters or extended clusters is not for disaster recovery. It is an option, but our recommended disaster recovery is data guard. Now you say, what is data guard? What, is not rack good enough? Yeah, rack is good enough. But then if you want 100% of your data to be available, when I say 100% with defined RPO and RTO, recovery point objective, recovery time objective, set up
Yes.
data.
Yes.
So what is data guard? Data guard is a block by block copy of your database, a physical standby at least. What that means is every time you write to primary, you can send the changes to standby, and the standby will write it. So that is what we call as data guard. Now, data guard, you can have even a logical standby. You can even have a transient logical standby to help with zero downtime upgrade. So it's not just for disaster. You can actually use it for doing certain things in a way. Now you say, Neil, this all sounds very complex, right? It's very complex. Well, we made it easier for you to get this or benefit from this, right? I don't know if you have heard about our, full stack disaster recovery in the Oracle Cloud. They use the same components, rack and data guard, and we configure everything for you. Just in
Mm-hmm.
one click, you configure it. You use one, scan IP, connect, and you're done. You don't have to worry about disaster, backup, recovery. So that's the best part. I talked about portability. You can say, no, I want to have it on the database should be on my laptop. Yeah, you can have it. The same application will work in full stack disaster recovery or autonomous or Exadata or even single instance or rack. So that's the best part. You get portability across the layers. So all of these integrate together to protect your data.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So you can recommend that we should use rack and data guard together if client agrees.
Yes, and again, it's a question of what they want, right? Most of the time, a business puts a value on their data. Like I was talking to another customer and I was asking them, how valuable is this data? And they said some number like 10 billion, $10 billion worth of data, right? Now, what that means is if that data is lost for any reason, they lose 10 billion and any accrual money that they make. So is it very valuable? Yes, it's kind of like, we put our valuables in a locker in the bank, right? Because it's valuable. We pay the bank some money, right? So is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it. And I know some people would say, hey, I never had a disaster in my life, right? And I'm one of the people who was in the US after, that when, disasters struck in New York City. Data guard was the savior because a lot of customers had data guard, so we could actually restore some of the data. And that's when right, like this disaster right now in Taiwan, right? If you think about it, of course, loss of life is a big thing, but also after that, what comes is the business. If you don't want all the businesses to shut down because data is lost. So data guard is a very important thing. And as the name says, it's guarding your data to be available, right?
Yes.
So back
Correct.
for local availability, local scalability, and then data guard for disaster recovery. That's the whole circle.
Okay. Correct. Thank you. So the another good product of Oracle is OEM. So how it works in Oracle RAC 19C for diagnosing performance issues or managing performance issues or any other resource utilization. So how it works?
Right, and that is so if I like the way the questions are going because you started with installation, administration, performance, and now management, right? So management is Oracle Enterprise Manager, as we call it, and Oracle Enterprise Manager, as is really now very interesting. And in fact, I think I was watching a video with my colleague, my Sriram, who actually is the PM for Enterprise Manager. Was showing me you could actually consume, you can monitor your on-premise database with a or OEM running in the cloud, which is amazing because that is I like to see the graph. because in the end we are all visual people, in the sense that if you send me a AWR report, it takes me a while to figure out, but if you show me a
Yeah.
graph of performance, so much easier.
Yes.
Similarly,
Yes. Correct.
patching now can be done with FPP, and FPP can be invoked from EM. So in Enterprise Manager, you can say this database, right click, patch, boom, it touches all the things. So you don't have to go and type O patch apply or O patch auto. You don't have to type that. It will do
Yeah.
that for
Correct.
you automatically, right? It
Okay.
it can do add node, delete node, and all that functions can be done. Yes, I know some people like to type those commands because yes, I'm DBA, SQL plus, yeah. I'm not doing it. But if you sometimes say, you know what, I like to see this, I'll have 20 databases, I can see the graph, I can see the backup, I can see everything, that's good too. So EM actually integrates very well with RAC. It's very aware of RAC, and we have, I talked to my colleague, as I said, Sriram, who's the PM for Enterprise Manager, periodically to make sure that all our features has a what I call as a screen in EM.
Okay. Correct. So this is the reason my second session, previous session was on OEM with Bashir.
Right?
So
Oh,
if you get a time, just watch it.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, as we know that RAC has the option of scaling actually. So, how it will accommodate growing database workload in RAC actually?
Right. So we kind of highlight this as a capital expenditure benefit, right? So what does that mean? So let's say AhmadTech is having X amount of growth today. So they purchase a server and they say I need this server. Good. Now by the grace, business becomes 1,000 times better, and your server is unable to scale. So what does Ahmad do? He has to sell this server and get a new bigger server, right? Well, with Rack, you could have got another server from eBay and added it, and then you don't have to buy the new one, because you did not even take or take the money that you spend on that server by the time you grew. Growing is good, right? Everybody
Yeah,
likes to grow their, but there is capital expenditure associated with that, right? So
yeah,
similarly,
correct.
allows you to grow, vertically and horizontally both. So this is one of the really cool things, and one of the things that I keep advising for both types of workload. Let's say you have a big query, and if the query does a lot of reads or the query does a lot of sorting, what you need is more and more memory. After a while, you cannot allocate memory on a single system. But if you have rack, a 16 node rack, that one of my customer uses, perfect. It can actually run parallel query across all the 16 nodes. So sorting, let's say 100 terabytes or 100 gigabytes of data, if you do it on one node, it'll be like as dependent on the performance of that. But if you have 100 nodes, you can actually spread that across hundreds and make it easier. And this is exactly what we do with Exadata, by the way. In Exadata, what we do is we not only spread the work across the compute nodes, we actually spread the work across the storage nodes also. So
Okay.
instead of trying to do all the work on a single instance, we kind of spread the work. It's like having friends, good friends, right? Nodes of the cluster is like good friends. You spread the work so that no one person get inundated with work. So that's how the magic is spread the workload so that it's manageable.
Yeah, correct. Thank you. My next question is how RAC support multi-tenancy and consolidation of database resources in shared environment.
Right. That's very good segue, because again the customers who are using hundreds and hundreds of databases, they're wasting resources, and moving to multi-tenant helps. And so we talked to many customers, and we got them to use multi-tenant. And it was very easy for us, and we looked at the requirements. What we found out is the requirements are easy allocation of resources. So we provided them a lot of features. Like for example, we provided them features by which you can open a PDB on a subset of node of the cluster. What that means is if you have 100 PDBs and you have a 10 node cluster, you could actually make sure that 100 PDBs are open on, say, a subset of the clusters. When PDB1 would be open on 1 and 2, PDB2 would be open on 3 and 4, and that way we spread the load. But what happens if there's one of the node crashes? We automatically open the PDB on some other node. How do we do this? We don't want the DBA to type the command at night. We say you
Mm-hmm.
define it at the service level. You define a uniform service, or you define a singleton service. And once you define it, we will take care of managing the PDBs across the cluster. So you would say, Anil, how many PDBs have you seen? And I tell you, on our autonomous offerings, we have seen literally, 5,000, 10,000 PDBs, and that is amazing. So even if you do servctl, just configure, it's like this screen keeps going up and down because that's so much PDBs that we configure. And
Mm-hmm.
in our new release that is coming out, we actually have improved even the timings to open and close PDBs, so that it doesn't affect the timings. In the sense, you don't want to say, hey, my 5553rd service, I want to change something, it takes forever. No, we kind of make sure that updating those services is fast and quick, because that's why downtime is, right? You want to take a service down, if you take that service command itself takes 5 minutes, that adds to the
Mm-hmm.
downtime. We don't want to. So we have
Mm-hmm.
optimized it. So multi-tenant works perfectly well with rack. So in a way, it's so well integrated with data guard, rack, multi-tenant, parallel query. All of these features are very tightly integrated, that you get the best out of optimized usage of your resources.
Correct. Thank you.
Mhm.
My next question is for security, because we know
Mhm.
that data, I think mostly banking environment is using Oracle product. Am I
Right.
correct?
Yes.
So for that, data security is a very important feature. So how Oracle RAG provide the best practices for securing the data against the hacker and all other?
Right. And so that is one of the parts where we provide you various solutions. Okay. So and they're all integrated very well with rack and ASM and our system. So there are three problems, right? One is intrusion. So a hacker or somebody can access your data by hacking into your database. So we
Yeah.
provide you one of the best tools to prevent it upfront, right? If you looked at 23C, we actually provide you a firewall in the database itself. Okay, again,
Okay.
optional for you to use it, right? Firewall means you can prevent people, or what we call as the bad people, from coming in. So first of all, we prevent you from doing that. Second is, if you have good security measures in place. And by the way, I talked about Aura check. The Aura check includes security checks in part of it. So if you run it on your system and you say, hey, there is a library that is bad, we tell you that, guys, go fix it. That library has been hacked. You need to apply that library. It could be an operating system library, or it could be something else, right? So we provide you with patches immediately. We look at operating system stuff and all that. So first of all, the idea is to keep bad people out. Now you would say, this is good. Now what happens if you back up and you put that into some, you know, S3 bucket, and you do say, forget it, right? Now if that S3 bucket is not protected very well, somebody could get in, right? So we have measures by which we don't allow you to do that. Then the third part is, how do you make sure your backup is good? So you want to make sure your backup is good, but you don't want bad people to access your backup, right? So we have solutions like the recovery appliance. So what does that do? So the recovery appliance takes your backup and puts it into some device. Now let's say you have the device and you kept your, let's say you took a backup and you forgot. Now you took a good backup. This is good. 1 week ago you took it. Now your next backup is in tomorrow. But by that time, if that physical device failed, your backup is gone, so that one day you're exposed to a crash. So
Yeah.
what recovery appliance does is, we periodically scan the backups to make sure they're good.
Okay.
Also have sophisticated block checking algorithm, which, so if some hacker comes and changes some data block, we can check, hey, this is not matching what we have. So we have what we call as, um, we have features by which we can figure out that it's, something has changed. We also have, the security range of products like the TDE. we can do TDE, and then basically that
Yeah.
is given at a higher level. So, but it's all a
Yeah.
choice. You guys as a customer decide what you want.
Okay. Thanks. So time is passing very fast, and so my last question, and then audience want to ask something. So my last question is that can you share, because you have lots of experience in rack implementation and working from almost 3 decades. So can you tell any use case and a real world scenario where you has successfully implemented rack and achieve the business requirement or challenges you discuss if you want, otherwise no issues.
No, no, definitely, I'll be happy to. And always, as usual, I would advertise my favorite customer. So if you guys have not Googled it, you should Google, PayPal, Oracle Rack, Anil. You would see this video where, I was able to work with PayPal folks, and that video is very technical, explains how the journey went. The journey
Hmm.
was really a long journey with a lot of sleepless nights, because when we started the journey, somewhere in 2007 or 8, I will forget. Maybe I'm, plus or minus 3 4 years. But the requirement was very clear, and we worked together. It was not a work; it was a partnership. We worked with our customer. We got together. We looked at what they want. We tried to adopt that and implement that, and we have added features based on our feedback with customers. So if you have not seen that video, please do see that one, because that is an amazing collaborative video on a requirement, a business requirement. What is that? Which
Okay.
is basically scale, secure, and highly available with Oracle Rack, and they are able to
Hmm.
do all. And the video covers all the details. How does that work? What feature was done
Okay.
for that? What is the business problem? It's amazing. So I would highly recommend you looking at that. And if you can't find out, let me know.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much from my side. And one last question. If suppose every DPI wants to ask where I have to study rack, from which book we want to study. So your suggestion from on this point of.
Yes, so I would say be up to date a bit on some of the key technologies around recovery. It doesn't matter if it's Oracle or not, right? The failures are very common. Then you start to understand how Rack does things, and that one thing I keep telling, which is very underrated, is our Rack Chapter 5 documentation. And I keep saying the Rack Admin Guide Chapter 5 because that gives you a good, you know, um, idea of how does Rack work to help your workload. And if you can connect those two, that is a good starting point. You can, always look at some of the blogs that I write. Like I try to write simplified blogs where people understand how things work. I wrote a recent blog where even my boss was saying, this is so basic, right? But yes, it is basic for people who have been doing it for 30 years. It may not be basic for a new DBA, a new college graduate. So I would recommend that, definitely look at those to understand high level how technology is evolving, how we are using software to solve the technical problems that we have.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah.
Thank, thanks. Yeah, audience, please ask the questions if you have anything from Anil Bhai. This is the chance you can shoot rack questions. Yeah, guys, quickly please ask because time is passing too much. You can type in the chat box if you want to ask, if you have anything. No questions? I think you answered every questions, so they are satisfied.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Too bad we have to do it on Zoom or go to meeting, but would be nice one day to do it one on one, face to face soon one day.
Yeah, inshallah, I will try. I will try. So actually, the idea comes this month to start the Tech Talk series. So that's why I took Aman Paji, the first one, and then
Yes.
I took Bashir, who is my junior, but he is very good in OEM. And now you are my big brother for rack expertise. So that's how I'm bringing and taking the appointments with speakers to come up and do chat on their expertise so that audience can know better. Okay, because reading the slide and all, it's boring, I feel sometime in online, but this face-to-face discussion online is very helpful to understand. So that was my motto. So I
Yes.
hope it's helping the DBA community. So thank you very much for your time. Okay. One question comes finally. Myself, new Oracle DBA, kindly suggests in which way I can strengthen up knowledge of rack and other Oracle cloud, etc.
Right. So I think I advertise this a bit more one more time, which is basically the rack admin guide. It gives a good idea of how it is now. I know it's a long book. It's not something that the newer generation likes to read targeted blogs and targeted things.
Yes,
And
yes.
you know,
Shortcut.
I shortcut, yes, and it's not bad. I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. I write blogs about this. My boss and me, Marcus, we write blogs about our technologies. It would be good if you follow and read up on that, and then continue to reach out to us if you want. Luckily, I'm followed by a lot of our colleagues like Ahmad and other people who also write these things. So follow some of these people, and again, if you have some questions, feel free to reach out to me on social media. I typically get back within a week max, just because I'm traveling and sometimes there's too many questions. It's a good problem to have because rack is very popular, but it's too many things to do. So that's what I would say. But again, rack admin is your go-to for these things.
Okay, correct. Can you please provide any link? Yeah, I will provide in my when I upload this session. So in the comment section, I will provide the links and Anil Bhai Twitter link and LinkedIn reference if Anil Bhai allow. So you
Yes.
can connect. Okay, but wait for 7 days or 10 days because he is very busy person. So have patience. Okay. So any other question, guys? Please quickly. We are only 3 minutes because Anil Bhai has given 1 hour time only. Okay. Yeah, guys. Oh, okay. I'm stopping here, Anil Bhai.
Thank you.
So thank you once again. You had given so much your precious time for me, for my audience. So I'm really delightful for that. And inshallah, we will meet in future also if you give me a time. And
Definitely.
one last question: when is Oracle 23C is coming for production availability?
Yes, so I cannot give you a date other than saying the first half of financial year 2024 is when
Okay.
you're supposed to say.
Yeah, that
I
I
can,
heard.
yes, that's the one thing because of legal issues. We are not allowed to give you a specific date. I'm sorry,
No,
but
no, 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 no. It's okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. Your great session. Thank you, guys. So thank you,
thank
Anil
you.
bhai. Bye. Take care.
Take
Good
care. Bye
night. Good.
bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, guys, you can take. So thank you, guys, for joining this session, and we will upload on YouTube channel very soon. So those who miss this session, they can access my YouTube channel, that is AhmadTech channel, and you can take it. AhmadTech 91 is the things. Okay. So thank you. Bye.